Hello, I'm James and I'm an old guy in Europe. Hello, and welcome to this very first episode of An Old Guy in Europe. Thanks for taking the time to join me. As you might have guessed by now, my name is James. I'm an old guy, and I live in Europe. What I have in mind for this first episode is an introduction to myself, how this channel came to be, and what I have planned for it. So, let's get started. I moved to Europe in the fall of 2021, and I'm currently in the process of acquiring my 5-year permanent residency in Portugal. In addition to all the other interesting, fun, and challenging experiences I'm having as a new resident of Portugal, I will be publishing a new episode of An Old Guy in Europe every Friday, so please join me for what I hope to be many, many more new episodes. Of course, if you enjoy this and or any future episodes of An Old Guy in Europe, please do let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You can do that by clicking the like icon, the old thumbs up, which traditionally has been at the bottom of the screen, but I think more recently they've, at least for some people, moved it over to the right-hand column. So look in either place and you'll find it there. And if you want to subscribe to this channel, to An Old Guy in Europe, then you can also do that, and then you can find every episode much more easily each and every time. And mostly, I really appreciate seeing your comments, questions, and suggestions for what you'd like to see from me in future episodes. So I invite you to please feel free to let me know in the comments section below, or in that right-hand column, whichever. In this first episode, I want to take a few minutes to tell you how An Old Guy in Europe came to be, and what I have planned for you in future episodes. Back in 2016, after living my entire life in the United States, and nearly all of that in California, I began thinking about what it might be like to live somewhere else in the world. So I started exploring places on the internet that I was curious about. By 2020, I had looked at many interesting and beautiful places, and I got this crazy idea to leave California and actually go live somewhere else in the world. Climate, culture, and cost of living were my top 3 considerations. So after considering and ruling out Central America and Southeast Asia, I'm just not a tropical climate kind of guy, I ended up looking more closely at Europe in general, and eventually narrowed it down to Portugal more specifically. I go into more details about all of this in the next 2 episodes, so please be sure to tune in for those. After viewing lots and lots of YouTube videos in the process of my exploration, I got the idea of starting my own YouTube channel. Originally, I thought of creating something like a series of touring videos, but that ended up feeling a bit too limiting for me. So after a long process of figuring out what I actually wanted to do, I came up with a working title, and then got started with the all-encompassing task of actually migrating. And then I lost track of the idea, and it got buried in the pile of all the stuff I was doing and all the new experiences I was having being in Europe. That is until 2023, when my friend Hank, who I'd met on a YouTube channel called Good Morning Portugal, and you'll see plenty of that on future episodes. Anyway, Hank and I were talking, and virtually every time he would say something about how helpful and useful and interesting what I had to say was for him. And he thought that starting a YouTube channel where I share this would be, in his words, absolutely amazing. So, after lots of encouragement from Hank, I began putting the pieces together, literally, and through a very long and steep learning curve, have finally gotten to the very exciting point of actually creating this channel and publishing this very first episode. In the next two episodes, I'm interviewed by Carl Munson on his Good Morning Portugal show. And in these two interviews, I introduce myself and share my experience of moving from California to Portugal, as well as my curious relationship to the banana slug and a whole lot of other stuff. I thought sharing these interviews with you would be a good way of introducing myself for this channel, An Old Guy in Europe, and for sharing my experience of moving from the U.S., which eventually brought us here to the launching of this channel. For the past 2 years, I've been a weekly guest live every Monday with Carl on Good Morning Portugal, and we've now completed well over 100 episodes together. That's a lot of episodes. Anyway, the vast majority of my current content for An Old Guy in Europe comes from these GMP episodes. In addition to these, I will also be expanding my content by mixing it up with many other experiences I have here in Europe, to include my travels, like my short trip to Dublin, Ireland, for instance, and other personal experiences, and maybe even interviews with some of the interesting people I meet along the way, and pretty much anything else to do with me being in Europe. So please keep tuning in and be sure to keep your eyes open for my new episodes every Friday. This channel will include pretty much anything regarding me, an old but young at heart guy being in Europe. Thanks again for joining me for this first episode of An Old Guy in Europe. I hope you enjoyed it and will continue to join me each week in this new adventure. I look forward to seeing you next Friday for episode 3. Until next time, this is me, James Hawley, signing off and wishing you all love, joy, and peace always.